When you think about the upcoming winter break, are you a little bit nervous? Your teen's going to have way too much time on their hands. Or maybe you're thinking about your college student who is back after some newfound independence. Or maybe it's even your 20 something, like my kids, who are living on their own, but they're back under your roof and you're navigating a little bit of unexpected or maybe expected chaos. Perhaps it's about curfews, the C word. Maybe it's about what they need to do around the house or time to go visit grandma or other family expectations that you have that make for a really special holiday season for your family. And it's okay to have those expectations, but you're probably going to get some pushback. Well, I invited Dr. Andrea Brenner. She's an expert at navigating this stage with our kiddos. And she's going to give you things to be proactive instead of just reactive, so that you can set up your own expectations and theirs and find some middle ground so everybody can have a peaceful holiday season. And if you're not listening to this at the holiday season, you know you're going to navigate those times, whether it's summer break, spring break, or some other time where you're going to encounter this. This episode has something for everybody if you have a 15 to 25-year-old and you're navigating this stage, regardless of the time of year, when they come back into your home under your roof and you're thinking, what about my rules? Okay, let's dive in. We've got some really good stuff today. Andrea, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.
I'm so excited to have you back on, and I can't believe we were just together in person recently. So
It's very exciting.
that's even more fun than being online, but we'll take what we can get, right? Well, happy holidays. You are like dressed for the holidays. I love it.
I'm getting in the mood.
And that is our topic for this episode. Like navigating, particularly freshmen coming home for the holidays, which you are a specialty, that is your specialty,
Yeah.
is these first year college students and all the many things that go with it. And as I was looking at over everything, I'm like, oh, so much of this is applicable to whether you still have a teen in your home, an older college student, maybe even a young adult who's living on their own, but they come home. And it can, but the hardest year probably is that freshman year, right?
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
What do you find as you're working with this particular age group is the most challenging part of these freshmen? Because this is, I guess, often it's the first time they've been home.
Yeah. Sometimes they've come home for long weekends, but this is
Yeah.
usually the first extended period of time. And I love to say to parents, treat this as practice for winter break. When you have them for a much longer
Longer.
time, much longer, especially if you're a new college parent, probably longer than you're anticipating.
You may want to
Um,
actually like bookmark this, to keep coming back to every time they're coming home, right?
Exactly, exactly. I mean, there's so many little things that pop up, and most of my work, as I've said on your podcast before, is data driven. So we look at where students and families are really meeting challenges in that first year, and then kind of circle back and talking to high school families and new college families about what that could be. So I would say it's really the focus on of quality versus quantity time.
Hmm.
Your student is going to come home from college probably exhausted.
Yeah.
College doesn't stop when they come home. They're going to have assignments. They may have been up doing projects right before they came home, and they really do need to sleep. And that's hard because sometimes it's overprogrammed time. And I love to say to families, try your best not to overprogram, because we really do have to respect that our kids need both sleep,
Yeah.
sleep and nutritious food. I'll put those together. And then also, the ability to just close the door and get caught up on work.
And I
And
get
that can
it
be
as,
really
as a mom,
frustrating.
we're both moms. It's like when they come home at winter break, particularly, and I just realized like we're dropping this between Thanksgiving and winter break, this episode, but it'll be a good one even for any other time they're home. But like you're just craving time with them if you've not seen them a lot.
Absolutely.
So I love that idea of like from a parent mindset, focusing on quality over quantity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also love to say to families, I think this is a great message for your students, is talk about these things in advance, right?
Mm.
Tell your parent or talk to your student about your needs, right? I am going to have to catch up on sleep. I am going to have to do these three projects and they'll take me approximately this amount of time, just so there's no surprises. I would say it's especially tough for new first year college students coming home for their first extended break when they're a little bit surprised that there are still rules or maybe the big C word, curfew, when they come home, when they have really lived on their own. And it is tough to parent a young adult who has been away from home and they have not had anybody, checking in on what they're eating and when they're waking up and, telling them what time they should come down for a meal. And so, really kind of having a conversation in advance about what are the non-negotiables from the parent's
Mm.
perspective, right? So we can be flexible. We want to have relaxing time with you, but also, we've got to go see grandma on this date. I need you available. I need you dressed. I need you ready, etc. So I think an open conversation pre-visit home, whether that's Thanksgiving or winter break, really can set the stage for a successful visit.
Well, and just, we, as I think, as busy parents who are juggling so many things, and you've got the family calendar, like, in your head, right, that to your point, we're going to go see grandma on this day, or we have this particular event that is important to us as a family. Expressing that, like sending the list over.
Yes.
As you're talking about rest, one of the things that comes to mind that we talk a lot about in our Launch Career Clarity community is like we need space for both rest, but also rejuvenation. And they're really two different things.
Yeah.
And one of the places that my head went, we went out to dinner with our close friends last night, and they have a freshman that will be coming home and they were talking about schedules. Rejuvenation comes from doing the things that feed your soul. Like rest is sleep or maybe vegging out with some Netflix. But we also need space for rejuvenation, which for them, maybe seeing grandma is not necessarily rejuvenating, but
Absolutely.
it's a non-negotiable as a family. But what rejuvenates you, and it's probably time with friends and things like that.
Time with friends is probably the biggest complaint we hear from families is my student wants to be with their peers more than me. And for the freshman family, that makes complete sense. They're coming from a world of living only with peers, right?
Right.
And so when your social community is 18 and 19-year-olds, you're craving that. But again, that non-negotiable word pops up. You can say to a college student, I totally get it that you want to see your romantic interest, your high school buddies, but I really don't want you to spend your home time with college friends that you're going back to, right? So
Right.
just being thoughtful about the conversation because students do want to keep that going with their college folks for sure.
Well, when you talk about the curfew, let's talk about the C word a little bit more.
Yes.
When you talk about curfew, I mean, for me, it was always like a sense of like respect. And there were really even two curfews. What time would I maybe like you home by? What time would I like your friends to leave my house by so that it's quiet enough that I can sleep?
Yeah.
And while this is a winter discussion, that also tees up like that. I think it's hard when they come home that summer after freshman year because a
Yes.
lot of times by summer after sophomore year, and parents hate to hear this, a lot of them are staying on campus. They're not coming
Absolutely.
home anymore.
Right. Right.
So what do you find most people do in that curfew? I know everybody's got to figure out what works for their family,
Absolutely.
right?
Everything that
But
works for
is
them.
there like a norm of what you see people
Well, I don't know
gravitating
that
to?
there's a norm, Lisa, but I think the advice that I would offer those families is have a two-sided conversation. So instead of the parents saying, here's the curfew now, it's what do you think is a reasonable time, knowing that you're coming home and we're waiting up for you, or the noise will keep us up, etc. And so, that's part of having a college student, right? And the
Mhm.
difference between that vertical parenting of, parenting down that we've been doing since they were little, which makes complete sense. There is a hierarchy when we have children living at home, and especially when we're in charge of their health and safety. And, horizontal parenting as we switch to that, that doesn't mean you're going to be your kid's best friend. I think that's a misconception, but it does mean we're going to have more on par adult conversations, right? They
Yeah.
may not be a 50-year-old adult, but they are still able to have an adult conversation that's reasonable. They're no longer talking to an angsty teenager. And I think that's really important, just to say, I'm thinking about a curfew. Maybe we don't even use that word anymore since you've been on your
Yeah.
own, but like, what time seems reasonable to you, and then have a little negotiation. I think that makes complete sense.
Or even like if you're not going to be coming home, like what you need to communicate. So I'm not worried.
Sure. And how you're going to communicate, right? Send
Yeah.
me a text by midnight and all will be well. Whatever that works, whatever works for your family.
I remember feeling that way. It's like when they're gone, and seems so funny to me, like when they're gone on campus and you don't really know. And I wasn't one of those moms who had like Life 360
Ugh, me
on the
either.
phone. I don't think it's a great idea. And so I'm like, well, they're off doing their thing,
Right.
and I don't know. But suddenly, when they're back in your house, it's like your brain turns back on to worrying about it again.
Absolutely. There is something about them coming home. And I think that's sometimes a challenge too, right? Because students coming home do want that comfort and almost that little bit of that regression of being, in your parents' home and
Yeah.
having meals cooked for you and, patting down in your PJs and all of those, especially with holidays, right? The smells of home, the feeling of
Yep.
family. And that's great, but there can sometimes be regression. And so, how do you balance that with, I've lived on my own, I don't want a curfew? And again, I think conversation's really the way to do it.
I was going to say, so you are the master of these conversations with your talking college cards, and we'll put a link to them in the show notes. You've got different decks
Thank
for
you.
all different topics and phases of this journey as we're getting these kids to launch out on their own. And do you have any tips then on conversations when there's total disagreement around, okay, well, I don't like that word curfew. And by the way, no, I think it should be, I don't know, a kid saying something unreasonable.
Right.
And they're both doubling down, and maybe you just need your sleep as a parent. But any tips for like closing the gap when the gaps exist?
Yeah, I think that's complicated and can be challenging. I think a lot of negative interaction can be avoided with
Mm.
conversation, multiple conversations, right? Start the conversation early. So maybe you do test it out Thanksgiving and you see what didn't go so well. Don't expect perfection. And then you can say to them a couple weeks before they're home for winter break, here's some things I didn't think worked great about us together at Thanksgiving. I'm going to tell you, and you tell them, and you say, what kind of things didn't you think worked well? And have
Mhm.
that again, having that horizontal parenting conversation. And how can we change things so maybe they're a little bit better and everybody feels respected when you come home? And maybe that's they're sleeping at a friend's house on a night they want to be at a party very late. Whatever that might be for your family, the earlier the better, but letting that student be a part of that negotiation. I think when it comes to that student coming home and really having still growing and working into a new identity, that can be really challenging. I think you and I have talked about this before, but I love to talk to families about the power of the word yet. So if you know that you're going to be at a Thanksgiving or a holiday table, Christmas table, and you know that there's going to be a lot of extended family who say, all right, kid, you're in college now. What are you gonna major in? What are you gonna be when you grow up?
Yeah.
What are your summer plans? And that can be overwhelming to your kid. Again, talk about it in advance. Talk to them about the difference between saying, I don't know, and I don't know yet, right? Because I don't know yet means it's a process. I'm in that growing process. Here are my interests, but I'm not exactly sure what I want to do yet. And, instead of them being sort of turned off by that, kind of prep them. Yeah, this is a realistic thing that your extended family is going to start asking you some questions.
Well, and it really I think recognizing that those questions actually come from a good place, right?
Absolutely.
Those extended family members, they're excited for these kiddos and they want to support them and cheer them on. So while it can feel very pressure filled to the teen or young adult,
Yep.
no, like they're only asking because they care about you and they're excited for you. They want to encourage you. Because when we put a different lens, something on like where the well-meaning questions are coming from, despite what they might like feel to you in the moment, that kind of helps us to be a little bit more accepting, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think so. And another thing that comes to mind is, and it's hard as it is, especially at Thanksgiving when our time is a little more limited, we do need to leave some time for the deeper conversations, right?
Right.
Students might come home with new identities they're trying on, totally different political bend than different things that they learned. And again, we send them to college to expand their minds. We can't get angry when their
Yeah.
minds are expanded, right? So sometimes there is a little bit of this like, don't judge the new me,
Mm,
and that's tough, especially with extended family who might not be as welcoming. So I love to tell families, set aside some just downtime where you just, yeah, yes, absolutely, time to watch TV and relax and play a game, but also time to actually have some heavy conversations in case they come up. Maybe they're about a change in a major, or maybe they're about an identity, or maybe they're about something that they're just learning and they want to explore more and talk it through. I think that's tough as parents. I know I went through this when my kids came home from college, when I saw them changing, and I was thrilled that they were changing, but at the same time, I was like, I don't know these new young adults,
yeah.
right? And I want a little bit of time to get to know the way they're thinking.
Or they have new people in their lives that you're thinking
Yeah,
like, well, who is that person?
right.
Or
Right. How could you have a best friend I've never met before, right?
exactly. It feels so foreign.
It sure
Often, and
does.
we remind parents all the time, particularly when we're doing the conversations around the career development piece, right? Validating their feelings and their thoughts, but knowing that validation doesn't mean that you necessarily agree. So you brought up
Right.
like a great point. What if your kid comes back with different political beliefs? We'll just pick on that one because I
Sure.
mean, that's a really easy target in this day and
Yeah.
age, right? Regardless of what side you're on, or if you're somewhere in between, if they come back with questioning or a different identity, you can validate their process or want to hear how they got there, but validation doesn't have to mean that you agree. And I think a lot of times
Right.
emotionally, people feel like, well, if I validate that, they're going to think that I agree with all of it, but I don't. And I got
Right.
to double
I don't, I
down.
really, I'm struggling a little bit. I don't agree with this, but I want to hear more. Tell me
Yes.
why you feel that way.
Get curious.
Yeah, absolutely. Get curious. In the same way you were curious about them when they were, figuring out their first words, right?
Yeah.
We have this magical curiosity when our kids are little. And I would love that, families could extend that into this college homecoming, right? Wow, my kid is changing. They might look different. They might eat different. There can be so much that changes in those first couple of months of college, even if you've seen them at a family weekend. And especially if I would say if you've seen them at family weekend, that's on their turf, on their
Yeah.
campus. But now they're coming back to, yes, it was their turf, but right now it's your turf. And what does that look like when somebody who hasn't lived under your roof for a while is now back under your roof? It's not easy.
You bring up a great point about like how we welcomed this when they were teeny tiny, right?
Hmm.
They're just like they're learning all the things. And I had a strategy that I used that really helped me. Like when my kids were teens, and parenting teens is not an easy journey, but getting out a picture of them when they were that little, like 3, 4, 5, 6 year old, like they're just so pure and innocent and all the things that you just see those little faces and you're like, oh my goodness. And keeping a picture of them at that stage out can be a great reminder and soften how you feel when you're interacting on unfamiliar territory
I
or you don't
love that
necessarily agree.
idea. Ooh, I'm going to start using that.
Oh,
That's terrific.
steal it away.
Absolutely. I love that.
Because
Another
I'm
thing I
sure I stole it from somebody
Oh,
else.
you know what? It's borrowing is fabulous. I love the idea of, as a new college parent, is to think about the fact that our kids are on campus every day and they're going into classes where they are asked to think critically.
Yeah,
They're asked to, you know, criticize an author's take on something. They're
yeah,
asked to rebut. They're asked to debate. That's part of the learning process. We can't expect them to come home and not do that,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's a really
Um,
great point.
yeah. I
Because
mean,
that's
that's
that
certainly,
like those higher level of thinking, intellectual type of
yeah,
conversations, right?
right, right. And we want that. We want them to keep
That's
those going. And
we
so it shouldn't
do.
be an escape from that. I think we should continue that in a homey sort of way.
So
Um,
I have a question
yeah,
for you because so your background, you created and go ahead and just because I'll butcher it. So I'm going to let you
sure.
talk through when you were at American University.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about you had created a very unique first year experience for freshmen?
Yeah, absolutely. So my background is I have a doctorate in sociology, and I was a sociology professor studying sociology of the first year student, so that intersection of sociology and education. And I did create the first year experience course at American University in Washington, D.C. And it continues to be, even though I have left AU, I left AU many years ago, that's still a mandatory first year, full year course, which is
Which is a unique piece, right? That it's a
very
full
unique
year, not
piece.
a
Yeah.
semester.
And right, exactly. And what that particular college does, and now certainly many other schools are doing, is saying, it's not just the how to write an email, how to find the career center piece of that transition to college, but it's how to talk across difference, how to interact with people who you might not like, right? How to be polite and professional in settings where you need to be. How to, most high school students have come from homogeneous environments and
Yeah.
they're entering much more diverse experiences in college. Like, what does that look like? And so certainly AU has kept that piece and it has been, changed and tweaked over the years. But I'm seeing lots of schools doing this now, and it's so, so important. And I think when we welcome our kids home, we have to remember that they're being trained to do this sort of stuff, right? And I think
So
it's so
what
important.
so what it made me think, what it popped into my head, like, like let's lean into your experience with sociology and this intersection with education and these freshmen. You for sure navigated many different challenges of kids like homesick or not being responsible when they couldn't balance that independence as a
Right?
freshman.
Absolutely.
Are there any questions that a freshman parent and parents of older kids too could be checking in on? Like, is there anything that you would say it would be very wise when you have that space for deeper conversation and you create some connection there, and they not right when they walk in the door after they've gotten
Hmm.
some rest. Maybe it's after Hanukkah and Christmas and whatever you celebrate before New Year's, and they're going back and they're a little more rested. But like just to be aware of what's going on with their freshmen, to really check in, like, are things really going well?
Hmm.
What are the things to be looking for, or maybe top of mind conversations?
Well, that's a great question. And I love the idea of a parent kicking off that conversation by talking about their own weaknesses when they were 18 or 19
Ah,
old.
love it.
So regardless if the parent went to college or not, they can still
Yeah.
talk about what it was like to leave home as a young adult. And to say, when I was X age, when I left home for college or work or whatever, here's the stuff I was struggling with. Are you
Mhm.
finding any of the same struggles? Oh, you're not? Well, what are some of those things that are challenging to you? Right? So normalizing challenges, I think that's
Yeah.
crucial. That brain is still forming for many, many years. And as I said on your podcast before, and I believe wholeheartedly, it is the rare student that arrives on campus both socially and academically, ready. I
Right.
think one is usually lagging behind, and that's okay. Colleges are ready
Yeah.
to welcome you, welcome messy, unfinished, unbaked, totally, underbaked students. And the first couple of years is still kind of trying to figure out who they are. So I love that. I love leading with my own challenges when I was your age. Also helps for, sometimes students, especially teens, they look at their parents at the current age they are, and they don't even
Right.
see them as that age. So it's a great reminder of, and sometimes you have to take a few minutes to actually think back, right? What really was tough for me? What are the challenges I met? Are you having those same challenges? Oh, not? That's great. What are some of the challenges you're facing? Normalizing that challenges are existing.
Well, I'm even thinking, like, as you say that, and you and I have kids that are a little bit older, not a lot older than this age group, but I could use that with my 24, 27, 31, 34 year olds too. Like, oh,
Absolutely.
I
Sure.
remember when I was a new parent, right? My biggest struggle was, and I've had some conversations like that with my son this year, as he's navigating. I'm like, yeah, it's hard, period.
Right.
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 But going
For
ahead and
sure.
leading that, we talk about that with jobs all the time. Like, I always say to parents, like, think about how you talk about your work life, right? Is it always negative, or do you not share the challenges of working through a difficult coworker, a boss who maybe is being too demanding? Because we set up these expectations of a highlight reel that's just not accurate. And then our kids will not do well through the struggle.
Right. And that's also the world we live in, right? The
Yeah,
perfect life on
I know.
Instagram. It's really tough. We do need to show them at all different ages of our life where those challenges were, where we made mistakes,
Yeah.
right? And where we grew from those mistakes. I think that's crucial also.
This has been so good. Is there anything that we're missing that you wanted to get in? I just want to be
You know, one
sure.
thing that I actually wrote down that I wanted to make sure I
Yeah.
said was this kind of awkward dance, this balance between my baby is home with
Mm.
not babying your adult child.
So
And
hard.
I know it is so hard. And when your kids have been on their own, and especially a kid that has really been challenged by living independently, I would tell the parents, don't rush to do their laundry. Don't clean up after them in the same way you may have when they were younger. Even though you get something out of that caretaking because you love welcoming them home, if you're going to do anything that's going to set them back in terms of living independently, that doesn't mean don't make their favorite foods or things like that, but just kind of check in, if
Yeah.
they were struggling, for example, to do laundry, is it really a good idea for you to do laundry for them? Or maybe you do it with them or you talk to them while they're doing it, right? And so really kind of think because we don't want that little time home as any bit of a regression.
Yeah, like a setback. That's such great advice because we do like they walk the door and you're like, "Oh, I mean, even when my son, daughter-in-law, and grandson were visiting in August, I'm just like, I just want to do for you
Right.
and love on you and give you a
Absolutely.
break and but helping can hurt sometimes if it's not channeled in the right way."
Especially when it's an 18 or 19-year-old
Yeah.
brain. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Yes. Oh, this has been so good. So, you are the master of curating conversations with your Talking
Thank you,
College
Lisa.
decks. What's your website? How do people get them?
Talkingcollege.com. Thank you so much.
We'll put it in the show notes, but it's so easy
Excellent.
to remember. Hopefully, people will remember it. Andrea, I know we'll have you back in the future. This was just a really great way to get us thinking appropriately about how to interact with not just first year freshmen, but our kids of all ages. You gave me some stuff that I can use with my 24 and 27-year-olds around the
Excellent.
table
Thank
as
you.
well.
Well,
Thanks,
thank you for
Andrea.
having me and happy holidays.
You too.
Bye.